Hello, Mr. Cooper. Good to see you on TV Rain. Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, of course, I would like to ask you about the incident on Crimean Bridge. It's the second one already. And every time it's really striking. I suppose it's striking for Russian government, Vladimir Putin personally. How do you evaluate this? What military prospects does it open for Ukraine?
Well, the strike is cutting off the lifeline of the Russian armed forces in southern Zaporozhye and southern Kherson. So it's ideal. It couldn't be better. It's limiting their options for movement of supplies and reinforcements to the port of Berdyansk, which means Ukraine has it easiest to target this before they are reaching the front line. It's perfect.
Can you give me some more details? Because, you know, there are viewers who are not military experts right now. And, in a foreseeable future, does it change anything seriously for the Ukrainian counteroffensive?
Yes, it's changing significantly because during the first month of this offensive, the Russians have undertaken everything possible in order to prevent any kind of Ukrainian advance into southern Zaporozhye and southern Kherson. They have blown up the Kakokatan. They have sown huge, immense minefields in southern Zaporozhye, which are 5, 10, 15 kilometers deep. They are heavily defending these minefields. They're trying to prevent Ukrainians from making any kind of advance in southern direction. So what we see is happening now is that they have moved all of their troops from second and third and fourth lines of defense to the first line of defense. They're wasting their troops in an absolute maximum effort to stop Ukrainian advance, so discourage Ukraine from continuing this offensive. They're suffering incredible losses. They are living under absolutely terrible conditions in their trenches. They're hit by everything Ukraine can shoot at them. They're dying in droves, but they're trying to stop any kind of advance. And now, 1.5 months after the start of this offensive, they are cut off from their supplies. There's going to be nothing moving via the Kerch Bridge, via occupied Crimea, to southern Zaporozhye for the next at least a week, if not longer. No bullets, no artillery shells, no food, and no reinforcements. The Russians now have only one option, actually, which is to move all of this via the port, per ship, via the port of Berdyansk. And Ukraine has it easy under post office because it only needs to target Berdyansk in order to stop this flow of reinforcements. And this is going to be much easier than with the bridge. The last time it was some 5 or 6 weeks that it was cut off. And from what I've seen in regards to photographs and videos these days, even if they're trying not to show that, one of the spans of the bridge is down, which means it is cut off, at least the road bridge. I don't know the extent of damage because there is a road bridge and next to it is a railway bridge. Yeah. So I don't know the extent of the damage on the railway bridge. But if it's the same damage like the last time, then the railway bridge is cut off as well. And this is crucial. And this is why I said this is a giant success for Ukraine, because it is almost certain that the railway bridge is cut off or damaged sufficiently to prevent the movement of the railway, of rails along it. And this means the Russians in southern Zaporozhye cut off from their supplies. All they have left is the port of Berdyansk now.
So going to the counteroffensive situation on the ground. So we can hear the statements and rumors and, you know, some kind of, thoughts of different people in the West, which demonstrates that they are relatively disappointed with the counteroffensive. How would you describe the situation in Ukraine on the ground? I understand that you are not there. We are not there. But what we can see that it's stalled, maybe. It's very slow. Experts and analysts, they explain it because of the minefields and a lot of details that we need to take in account. But still, do you think and do you expect that Ukrainian armed forces would change the tactics or strategy even, considering that there are some problems with the counteroffensive right now?
Problems with the counteroffensive. The West has sent too little. Sending 60 Leopard tanks and 120 Bradleys and then expecting Ukraine to liberate half of the territories occupied by Russia, that is laughable. And then in the middle of the offensive, 3 weeks into its start, the West has run out of ammunition. So if they are disappointed by the slow advance, they could have sent more, firstly. Secondly, excuse me. If they are disappointed by the advance, they could have advised Ukraine better, because what were units like the 47th Mechanized Brigade doing during the first few days of the war was following the US doctrine of heavy mechanized push through the minefields. So it has suffered losses. Thank you very much, Americans. Now go, or British or whoever was advising this. Now you can go home, and Ukrainians are doing this on their own. And what is going on now? So imagine the situation. You are sitting by the table. Okay, you move your leg to the right, boom, 1 mine. You move your hand to the left, boom, another mine. You move your chair to the back, boom, it blows up into your face, and you're happy if you're still alive and you haven't lost your eyes. This is the minefields and the density of minefields in southern Zaporozhye. And excuse me, but demanding from Ukrainian troops to run over this instead of first demining it, this is dilettantism, nothing else. So what the ZSU is doing, what the Ukrainian armed forces are doing, it's a switch tactics already weeks ago. Now they are doing this systematically, slowly, carefully, well-planned fashion, by night, and the way they are vastly superior to the Russians. Because if you put 1 battalion of the Ukrainian armed forces against 1 battalion of Russian armed forces nowadays, Ukrainians are winning with ease. The only thing that is the problem are minefields, and occasionally anti-tank guided missiles, attack helicopters, and so on. But the principal problem is minefields. You cannot move forward except you have cleared the line. So you first clear the line, then you clear to the right of that line, then to the left of that line. And you cannot move. You cannot even take cover without clearing enough space. And now if you have a line, this is just for 1 soldier. But if you want to move a company of 200 troops, you have to widen this line very much. This is taking days and days and weeks. This is the problem. If somebody is impatient, please let him go over there and do that on his own. I'm sure that ZSU would be very happy for any kind of help in this regard. Sorry for expression.
Tom, what is your view on the prospects of the counteroffensive? Can you see what is going on in the coming weeks or months? Because I can hear so many different views on the prospects of Ukraine, including years of this kind of counteroffensive, or including weeks, and then something would change, and there would be, the big news from the front. How would you expect the situation to evaluate?
The principal issue is Ukraine is fighting Russia, not Andorra or San Marino. Okay, so you're not. And the front line is going for hundreds of kilometers. It's hundreds of kilometers deep as well. This cannot be done in a day or 2 or just a few weeks. That is the first problem. Second problem, the Russians are doing everything possible in order to discourage Ukraine for further advance. And this is precisely where Ukraine is doing well now in terms of being patient and running a well-planned, systematic, small-scale attacks in which they are causing heavy losses to the Russians and then slowly advancing. This is working fine at minimal casualties for Ukraine, and that is good that way. Again, if somebody is impatient and thinks this is going to take years, yes, it's going to take years. But it is something. It is. Whoever thinks this war is going to be over by the end of this year or something, sorry, this is wrong. It is not going to be over. But this is the way to continue. Why? Because it's causing such murderous losses to the Russians that they are losing ever more of their capability. Keep in mind, 16 months ago, they marched into Ukraine with the second largest army of the world.
Yeah.
5 months later, there was nothing left of that army. They had to launch mobilization. So they are mobilizing now 20,000, perhaps 25,000 new troops a month, but they are losing them at higher rate than they are taking new troops into the army, and they cannot mobilize more than 25,000 a month. So if they continue losing their 15, 20, 25,000 troops a month, this is fine with Ukraine because Ukraine is not losing as many.
But I can hear the thoughts and then statements by different people saying that Ukraine is a smaller country, smaller than Russia.
Yes,
and
of course it is, yes.
when we talk about casualties, there are people who think that Russia has just more men, just physically. It can mobilize more. Ukraine is getting out of people. Is it true?
It is true, but technically Russia has not more men than Ukraine has bullets. It's as simple as that. Sorry for expression. I mean, warfare is an awfully rude, brutal issue. This is not something for like video games or something else. Ukraine still has more bullets than the Russian has troops. So in that, there is a joke. The war is coming forward very fine. I have to translate it to English. And the undertakers are living very fine from that, And this is what Ukraine is doing excellently the last 3 or 4 weeks. And it is simply not true that there is no advance. It is just very slow, very methodic advance. For example, since 4 or 5 days, Ukraine is already in Staromayorsk and Urozhaine. It is already inside the villages and actually holding the villages. But the Russians are rolling one counterattack after the other. So the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces is cautious, and we couldn't say, okay, we have liberated the villages because it's not, it's not firmly holding them.
Yeah.
But essentially, this is an advance of 5 kilometers. So it's perhaps not, some kind of blitzkrieg offensive driving 40 kilometers a day, but it's a very nice advance. And especially, one should consider how many Russian troops have been lost over there. You don't want to hear the numbers. So it is okay the way it is. It's not perfect. Of course, everybody would be happy if it would really go quickly and so on. But it's not working that way. We have to be patient. That's all.
All right. Going back to Crimea and, of course, going forward with our conversation about the counteroffensive and the prospects of the war, Ukraine is expecting the ATACMS, if I'm spelling it rightly, the long-range systems from the United States, and the range of it is up to 300 kilometers. Does it mean that Ukraine will attack Crimean Peninsula, Russia's fleet? How would it change the situation on the ground?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all. Look, what Ukraine needs are long-range weapons. That's true. But whether the Americans deliver ATACMS or not, excuse me for expression, but nobody cares. Eventually, sooner or later, Ukraine is going to start making such weapons on its own, or if nothing else, develop them in cooperation with Poland or South Korea or whoever else, and start shooting them on their own, with or without the Americans. What is important is to finally explain and make it clear in the West. This is why such weapons are important. Either you deliver, or we are going to do this on our own. Because what the West is lately doing with Ukraine, conditioning delivery of arms on some kind of, you are not going to attack Russia, you're not going to do this. This is, excuse me for expression, nonsense. This is really disgusting. Because if the West would be in such a position, they would be using all kinds of weapons for their defense. And then they demand Ukraine not to defend itself with all means on hand. So now, what the ATACMS can't change tactically is to make such strikes like on supply depots and headquarters in southern Zaporozhye or in Luhansk or in Donbass or wherever we want it, make them easier and less costly, less dangerous for Ukrainian pilots, for Ukrainian artillerists. That is basically all. But it doesn't mean that Ukraine cannot reach such targets on its own. As one can see from the Kerch Bridge this morning, it can. So either the Americans deliver ATACMS and similar weapons or not. That is on them. But Ukrainians can solve such problems. That is important to understand.
It's not clear to me, for example, what is the weapons that Ukraine needs the most right now? What are the things, the weapons, the systems that would actually help radically change the situation? Maybe F-16s or something else.
if you go through, I've given, I think, around a dozen of interviews so far since the all-out invasion. The first was sometimes in early March last year, and I've said it right away. Ukraine needs artillery. And artillery shells. First and foremost, yes. Why? Because artillery is the branch of armed forces which is delivering or capable of delivering most of high explosives in terms of tonnage upon the enemy. You cannot deliver comparable amounts of explosives on the enemy with the air power. Artillery is absolutely superior in this regard. So what Ukraine needs first and foremost is artillery and artillery shells. USA and European part of NATO is still not delivering enough. Ukraine would like, for example, to have around at least 100,000 shells a month. It's receiving around 60,000. Ideally, Kiev would like to have 300,000 shells a month. It's not getting that, not even a third of that. So the West is now trying to improve this production to get it up to 300,000 a month. It's going to happen, well, perhaps sometimes late this year or early next year, we are going to see. This is in the future. It's pointless to talk about it. It's not happening now. No? So next thing, air defense systems. I said it already then. Why? Because you need an air defense system, firstly, to defend Ukrainian cities, secondly, to defend Ukrainian industry, and thirdly, to defend and to travel with Ukrainian forces, which means as Ukrainian forces are advancing on the ground, liberating Ukraine, the air defenses have to move with them to protect them from all kinds of strikes. Mm-hmm. What we have seen so far is the West delivering barely enough air defenses to protect Kiev, and that's it. There is not enough to defend Zaporozhye, Dnipro, Odessa, Kharkiv. No hope to defend properly Kharkiv. And so many other cities. So it is not enough. It's as simple as that.
What's the problem? Why aren't they sending this weapon?
It's a mix of problems. Firstly, the NATO said, oh gosh, we have to defend ourselves in the case that the Russians defeat Ukraine. So they are rearming themselves. Okay, theoretically one can say this is fine, that is nice that way, they have to care about themselves first, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. It's nonsense because it is obvious by now, but after 16 months of this, and actually after 9 years of this, Putin is never going to attack NATO. He knows best of everybody else that he cannot.
I think so.
He cannot match.
So you think he's not going nuclear?
No, nuclear. This is a bluff, first and foremost. And secondly, he has perhaps a few dozens of nuclear weapons which are still operational. And even then, he has a chain of command of 20 people between him and the final trigger puller. Every one of them has to agree with his decision to deploy a nuclear weapon. He's not going to risk that. So What is he doing? He's bluffing because every time he mentions nuclear, just that word, everybody in the West is going, oh! Yeah,
I understand this reaction, honestly.
It is, look, it is understandable, but again, he knows if he goes that option, he's going to spend the rest of his life inside some bunker. And those in between of him and the actual button, pressing the actual last person in the chain of command, pressing the button, they're not absolutely happy about either joining him in that bunker under the ground or living the rest of their lives in some post-cataclysmic kind of world. So I would take this cautiously. We have seen now how even most loyal of Putin's troops are giving up, turning against him, or at least against Shoigu and against Gerasimov, and actually starting a march on to Moscow. I will be cautious in his position. He has learned already several very, very defty lessons since invading Ukraine last year. And he knows he cannot joke anymore. This is why he's so quiet and so only appearing from time to time to babble about nuclear weapons. He's got nothing else left but public and TV appearances. So the same advice like last year, ignore this.
Well, thank you very much for this objective view and for your expertise. It's really important to us and interesting, very interesting. Good to see you on TV Rain.
We operated in Russia for 12 years and the government tried to get rid of us 3 times.
We had to leave, forced out of the country by new repressive laws after the first week of the war. Our freedom crushed by the authorities.
Мы временно приостанавливаем работу телеканала.
We survived, started working from Europe, and now we are watched by millions of people every day.
There's no other independent news channel in Russian. We have now decided to tell the truth about Russia in English as well.
So that you could get news about Russia, the war in Ukraine, and Russian society directly from the source.
We want to tell you firsthand what is really happening in Russia. Subscribe to TV Rain Newsroom on YouTube and let's take a look at our future together.